Circular cities, urban communities of tomorrow. The negative impact of the linear economic system is most noticeable in urban areas. Cities currently consume 75% of extracted natural resources, produce 50% of global waste, and emit around 70% of all greenhouse gases. Constant growth will intensify the problems of urban areas, but more and more cities have become aware of the ecological and social challenges and are searching for new solutions. Many turn to one promising idea, circularity. Circular economy departs from the continuous use of finite resources by decoupling economic activity from linear consumption. Social aspects such as participation, social justice, and quality of life are indispensable if circularity as a model is to foster real and comprehensive sustainability. In other words, we must broaden the concept of circular urban economies to circular urban societies. We believe that circular societies are the key to sustainable solutions for numerous challenges cities face today and in the future. I'm looking forward to present you two initiatives working on solutions in urban areas. My name is Julian Sachtleben. I work at the Hans Sauer Foundation, and I welcome you all to our session on circular cities. Dina Padalkina from Circular Berlin and Andrea Röhrl, together with Paju Bertram from Circular Munich, are here today to share their approaches for circularity in cities. Thank you very much for coming. We start with Paju from Circular Munich and the topic of co-creation for circular cities, followed by Circular Berlin from small initiatives to big impacts. Over to you, Paju.
Hello, thank you, Julian. I will share my screen with you now and hope that you can see the presentation.
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. So, hello and welcome. My name is Paju Bertram, and together with Andrea Röhrl, we are driving the circularity in Munich through our initiative Circular Munich. And to give you a little overview, for now, we are a conglomerate of around about 11 people. We all come from different areas and different sectors out of the city, and we co-create already through some projects and some initiatives the circular future of Munich. We will guide you today through some impulses on co-creation, the topic of co-creation, how is it actually linked to the idea of urban transformation, and we'll also see already some hands-on ideas from Circular Berlin, from Dina. She will present their mission and their activities, and you will learn a little bit about urban functions and how they actually can help resolve today's big challenges, and how we can actually drive towards a sustainable urban transformation. I will hand over to Dina to let her present Circular Berlin.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm also very excited to see so many participants today, and maybe also upfront for everyone, it's very joint session. We really try to create one session for you on the topic of circular city. That's why you will see a lot of changes between our experiences and what Circular Munich is doing. And that's why it's also a little bit about ourselves. Circular Berlin is basically a local NGO here in Berlin, where we try to accelerate Berlin transition towards circular city and envision it as a resilient and citizen-oriented region. We already had experience of exchanging with Circular Munich and share how we've done, how they guys are doing there. That's why I hope this session will be about joint impact, joint experience, and how we actually can make more transition towards further, even to create more circular cities around Germany and maybe beyond that.
Andrea, off to you. You will give us some insight now about the role of cities.
Yes, hello, also from my side. Good to see so many people in here. Why are we starting from the point of cities? Why are cities so interesting places to think about circularity. I think Julian already mentioned a lot of the numbers that are on this slide, but I will just still take some of the interesting stuff in there. First of all, at the moment, cities are really part of the problem. So right now, cities are really deeply rooted in the linear economy, which means like we take out resources, we make something out of it, we use them, and then in the end, they are disposed. So we're not making a really good use of our resources that we have on the planet. And therefore, as cities are quite densely populated, almost 50% of the global population already lives in cities, and the number is growing. Cities are really taking a lot of resources on the one hand, almost 2/3, and energy. But on the other hand, cities are also producing a lot of waste and greenhouse gases. So therefore, as there are so many people coming together, so many different actors within cities, they are on the other hand really also interesting to think when it comes to solutions. So how can we use cities as hubs to create a circular future? And that's why we really believe that's a good starting point. And what should we look at? From our perspective, cities already offer a lot of functions to its citizens. That's what all of us living in cities use every day. It's kind of course, the public services, we have waste management, but it's also like the mobility, housing, etc., that we all use, and it's there. And within those areas, we have a lot of like potential to change things. So basically, of course, what we first think of always, like it's like the circular economy already has it in there, of course, is the economic part, but there's so much more to it. So therefore, we really believe cities should be kind of like seen as this conglomerate of functions that we use. And if we start from those functions, and if we combine them with the circular principles that you might all know, which are like signing out waste and pollution, keeping materials and products in use, and also regenerating natural systems, then we can put together a set of really interesting strategies that can help us to make cities more circular. We've just put together some of the strategies. Of course, it's a quite broad range, but some which can be super interesting are here. If we take a look on it, of course, there are a lot of things around like energy sources, which we can use in a more regenerative way. Of course, it's connected to the housing sector. So how do we use energy? How can we increase our energy efficiency? But it's also like a lot of other areas. For example, the green areas. Do we really focus on creating green areas within cities? So what's kind of the ratio of like built infrastructure and green areas? What are the supply chains that we're creating? Like, are we focusing on establishing local supply chains and really also supporting the exchange between local players? How do we deal with waste? Of course, that's a topic I guess that most of you are quite familiar with because we think a lot about it. But also, like, what about the resource and material streams that we have within our city? That of course they're like inflows, outflows, but also what do we use? Like just to give them more, more focus. And sharing is of course a topic. Digitalization or virtualization can be an interesting strategy. So there's just a broad range, and basically it's a good, like from our perspective, this is quite interesting to look at the urban functions, combine them with service strategies, and within this combination, find good ways to create a circular city. And within this whole context, there's one approach that's quite interesting, which is the Circle City Scan. And Dina has applied this approach in Berlin. So maybe you can add some insights on that.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. Basically, this is it's a bit different view on the topic of circular city, because comparing to what Andrea presented, that was coming from the strategy side, this one comes from resource side. And CityScan is a methodology designed by Circle Economy. It's an organization located in Amsterdam. And the idea of the CityScan is mainly connected to the urban metabolism topic. Urban metabolism is a approach which helps to understand inflows and outflows. I mean, if you talk about urbanization, then it's could be reflected on the such a system as a city. However, it could be also narrowed down to the district or to specific kids, for example. And that's what we in Circular Berlin, when we started our work, we picked up as an interesting approach to work with. So we started looking on the specific sectors here in Berlin and to understand what will be the circular value chain within the sectors where Berlin is considered as a boundaries, or putting the geographical boundaries on that. Or maybe it makes sense also for specific sectors to extend the boundaries, like for example, for the food, you could also look on the neighboring areas around Berlin. And this is an approach which is also important to bear in mind and to consider how, to consider it in order to apply circularity in the city. I just wanted to give very brief intro into this because it could be a very long dive in, but for now it's just important to keep in mind it also exists.
To keep everybody updated and also to give chance to your ideas and your questions, we will have a Q&A session at the end of this session, and you can already start entering your questions in the chat. We will collect them and discuss them afterwards. So to actually continue, the whole session was called Co-Creation in Circular Cities, and I think co-creation has come up quite often within the last years, and many people have heard about this term. Nevertheless, within the literature, it's quite undefined, or there's not a real consensus about the term of co-creation, and it actually pops out within different areas of interest and different areas of research also. And we will keep the business part out for today, because this is a whole area of like a whole different area of interest. But we should consider these two approaches here, which is co-creation as an innovation approach. There has been some adaptations throughout innovative processes where co-creative activities have become part of a process, and then co-creation as a design method through workshops. And what is interesting is actually, if we consider co-creation and if we go away from these broad definitions and try to frame the term, there's an interesting thing that pops up over and over again, and it's that co-creation comes always with a kind of level of collaboration, so a level of engagement, and with an input, a clear input and a clear output. If considered right, and if decided to go for a co-creative activities, which can start off as a telephone conference or even a meeting, everything could be co-creative. But there can be quite interesting criteria to look for if we consider using co-creation as a real methodology within urban transformations and within social and cultural transformations. The criteria that we could look for if we decide to go for a real process of co-creation is that co-creation can be a real act, and we can use design or innovation as the methodology to frame it. There are beneficial factors to go for, which reaches or starts with the engagement level and gives everybody the voice to actually contribute and to share their perspectives, but also to drive towards innovation and ideate on new perspectives and new concepts and models. So the most common process approaches, as I said already, come from innovation and from design. And the interesting thing here, if we take design, for example, is that it has a super human-centered approach. So the role of humans, of human perspectives, of human behaviors plays an important role when actually driving transformation, social or urban or cultural ones. So where is actually the link towards urban transformation? There has been a consensus on actually that if we want to transform a city and develop it further in a more sustainable way, there are different levels that we have to consider, and we have to consider cities as systems. So when taking this system perspective, we could go from the macro to the meso to the micro level and identify the different players that act within these levels. The macro level is the overall frame, which is the city. Within the meso level, we have decision-making institutions. The public sector plays an important role here. And within the micro level, it's not the smallest level, but it's a very important level. We have the citizens, we have society, we have social initiatives, we have also public institutions and organizations that have to come and play together. So the idea is that, and Andrea has told you about these different activities and strategies, and if we want to broaden them, if we want to tackle them, we actually need the interaction of both, of all levels, and of the top down and the bottom up. And therefore, there are different models, so-called cross-sector collaboration models, and that help actually to frame a little bit where these activities and in which form they could take place. It starts from joint projects, short-term, one-time collaborative efforts, single projects, to joint programs, a bit more decisive, more framed, towards multi-stakeholder initiatives, where the engagement of different sectors plays, or is the focus, or plays an important role, towards actually collective impact, which means that the collaboration drives towards an impact, which can be here the environmental goals, the sustainable development goals, for example. I will hand over now to Dina to tell us a bit about the story of Circular Berlin and their impact.
Yes, thanks, Peter. I think it was very good step before what you explained, because we kind of, right now I think I start with a little bit of personal story of Circular Berlin, how it developed, and I think it's summarized quite well the steps which Paju just mentioned for co-creation. And I think it's also important for me to highlight this path, because it's probably one of the most often question I have to answer, how actually it came from Circular Berlin from the beginning till where we now. Maybe it will be also some specific learnings for all of you. So the initiative for us started in 2018, and it started actually also one little project between several volunteers. We've been 4 people who decided in the beginning of 2018 to explore circular economy in Berlin and to understand who are the circular economy initiatives and actors that start driving the change. This first workshop we organized together with several organizations. It was Climate Kick, Tira Materials, and Berlin Partner for Business Technology. And basically the idea was to map the initiatives here and there, which already at that time, in 2018, we could identify more than 100 different actors present in Berlin. And we were not very strict in the definition of circular economy. We also wanted to keep it broad, because I still believe until now circular economy's definition is very, it doesn't have specific engraved understanding, and the interpretation of it, I think, should still have a space for discussion. Maybe next slide. From that on, when we mapped so many different work around Berlin, it was for us also important to understand what is actually Berlin needs, and where the regulation and what are the potentials here about circular economy. So it was done specific research, and also we conducted several interviews. It was in the middle of 2018 to understand what is actually this actors whom we mapped initially understand about circular economy, how they see the impact around the city. And when we've done this research, also getting the first contact with Berlin municipalities, for example, we understood that we could derive from that specific sectors which were more or less I think from our research important, and also meet the needs of the city. And that was the basic stepping stone for current our work on the sectors which we defined. At that time, we decided to start the work with a built environment as one of the sector. Then it was close focus on the topic of food and food waste. Third sector for Berlin was textile and fashion, also because there is a lot of actors active already in the area of circular design for fashion. And I call it always 3.5 sectors, because I wouldn't say it's completely the sector, but Berlin is also is and was, and I hope will be, the city with a focus on reuse and repair. So there is a lot of initiatives in Berlin that already strive the topic of reuse and repair. And that's why, of course, it's one of the important strategies for circular economy, which city also decided to support. And when we defined in the beginning of, or in the middle of 2018, defined this, could we still, yeah, we defined these sectors, we actually stepped into the phase of multi-stakeholder workshops, which Peugeot also mentioned as one of the stepping stone for the co-creation. And starting in 2018 and until mid of 2019, we ran 4 multi-stakeholder workshops across the sectors. Each workshop was up to 70 people coming from completely different areas. So also representative of the district, representative of the sectors, representative of civil society. And that was actually the point where we wanted to discuss where the blockers are in the city for circular economy development, and how we can jointly move us forward to create activities for the city and to close the gaps. It was good outcomes, however, always questions like how to proceed with the outcomes. Now, could we move further? I think it was on a parallel role with development of a special input for the sectors, which I mentioned before. We also started grew as organization, because I think it's quite often is forgotten that we're still an organization, and whatever we do, sometimes external work, we also need to build ourselves internally, actually, to make this change. And 2019 for us as Circular Berlin became kind of a changing year for shaping ourselves as an organization. So we could establish ourselves as a association, not-for-profit association. And that was a year where we also started thinking first, in the first place, what is our goals, what is our mission, and how we can proceed with the all knowledge which we already got from society in the beginning. And that's what I think is very important to keep in mind, because at least for us in Circular Berlin was always very important discussion, how we can make sure that we are not only discussing something in our small bubble, but actually making a change. Actually our work is impactful enough. And it's always, I mean, we try to be always also self-critical and self-reflecting on the work we were doing. And I think that was actually this, for us in this session, it would be also interesting to hear from you, how you see the, what impact and change such organization as us or Circular Munich could drive for. And maybe next slide. In definition of all our work and impact, what we actually achieved, at least by end of 2020, and what is how we started the year, we became a local organization in Berlin that made quite a big outreach. More than 36,000 people at least could follow us online by the numbers which we could reflect. And we as an organization also create a lot of opportunities for different initiatives here locally. And with COVID now, it's became actually online session for all over the globe, where many attendees could also see visit our events. We also run a diverse workshops to bring the knowledge towards circular economy. That's how in the last 2 years of our work, we could educate more than 400 people and for different target groups, starting from the pupils till students and professionals. We also run different projects in diverse sectors, which I mentioned before, and until now we were capable to complete up to 12 projects within the sectors I mentioned. And what is also very important, that we became a community and open up our work for everyone who wants to join. And it happened actually last year, and until now we could reach more than 50 people who joined in Circular Berlin, and hope also they share our mission and interest to change our city. But about mission, I think what for us was back in 2019 to understand already from the very first step what actually we want to change, and further it was how we want to change it. And we came together in 2019 with our team members to identify our mission, which I will read out loud here. We envision Berlin as a resilient, citizen-oriented region. The resources are sourced locally, if possible, used only if truly needed, and their values maintained as a part of continuous loop. Within the limits of our planet, waste and pollution are not existent. People's life and jobs positively affect their neighborhoods and communities. For us, understanding of circular economy at that point was and it should definitely, especially if you apply it on the level of the city, that is definitely you should look beyond material sides of that. So it's not only about resources, but you need to include citizens and what impact we can do it on the social level. And when we defined our mission, we also wanted to look on what type of action we as an organization can run. And basically, we now as an organization doing knowledge building across 3.5 sectors, what I mentioned before, where we mainly strive for the project realization. Then we do community building, and we do it on different levels, starting from the individuals, but also try to become in a close cooperation with diverse stakeholders, which we still already know since beginning of 2018, and education activities, which where we try to share the knowledge derived from the sectors. This is the current status of our work, and I want to state here that the mission is the only first step for the impact, and that's what we're going to discuss later with you together.
Thank you, Dina, for your insights and the overview, and for joining or for letting us join your journey. And Andrea will now continue to present our concept for Circular Munich.
Yes, so I think it's quite inspiring to see where Circular Berlin is already standing, because like you started 2018, so you already have quite of a journey. And compared to that, for sure, Circular Munich is way younger. We're just half a year like down the road. And therefore, of course, like we're in a way earlier stage. So we are currently really thinking about what can be our contribution within Munich, and therefore it's kind of in the concept stage. We're already doing things. I will just give some insights on that in a second. But still, as Pashu outlined before, like this basic idea of co-creation is really in the core of what we envision. So let's have a look of where we stand right now. So basically, what we believe at the moment is that our mission can be to build bridges within the city to make change happen. That's our current hypothesis. It's not set in stone. It's more like what we perceive right now, where the big value can be. And how could we do this? On the right side, you see those circles, and in the core are the urban functions. That's what I also explained beforehand. We really believe that a city has to be understood based on the functions who are there anyways, and who can be used to apply different circular strategies. And of course, around those functions, we have a lot of different actors. On the one hand, we have to understand who are the actors who really want to drive circularity in Munich. So in the end, it will be a quite diverse set, of course, of specialists in the field, of companies, of public actors, academics, and of course also citizens who are interested in the topic. And one really important part will be to somehow make them visible and connect them. That's also things that Dina has already outlined that work quite well in Berlin. I think it's also a really important step for us in Munich. And within this ecosystem, we can then really drive co-creative actions, which again, of course, have a quite broad range of, on the one hand, joint learning, knowledge transfer, but also events and storytelling. We really believe that we have to change the narrative that we tell others around this topic of circularity. We really have to talk more about the potentials and about the positive impacts we can create. And this is kind of the setting where we see we should be active, and how could our actions in combination with all the other actors look like. On the one hand, that's what I already started mentioning, and that's also what we already started doing, is create transparency. So really map the ecosystem and make the relevant visitors visible, actors visible this way. And that's what we already started doing by creating a map that will also be released in the next 1 or 2 weeks for everyone, because we really believe that's not like some closed knowledge, but it's open knowledge, and we have to make it accessible for everyone in order to really create those connections we need. On the second level, we see a huge potential in creating joint goals, because in the end, it's always a question like, where do we head to? So really bringing together those actors and jointly decide on where does Munich want to go, what are our joint goals. And of course, on the third level, it's about collaboration. So we really have to drive hands-on actions by implementing co-creative projects on different levels, like with citizens, but of course also with companies and in combination with all those actors. So that's our basic idea. And of course, our goal is to find our role within this whole setting. So to define our mission. And then I think based on the mission, you can start thinking about like what can be the impacts. And that's also our connection, because as we are in different stages with Circular Munich and Circular Berlin has already taken a lot of steps to define the mission. So they're pretty much thinking about impacts, and therefore Dina has some input on how we can approach this concept of impact.
Yeah. Because we're coming to a little bit of the Q&A session and action session. I also want to briefly touch upon the topic of impact, because as I mentioned, for us, and I think in general for every organization independently, it's not about being an organization, it's about why we're there as an organization and what type of impact we want to strive for. And for us, as also a very young organization, we joined the path of understanding our impact, and we started using the impact framework. Maybe some of you know that already. It's an input, output, outcome, impact framework, also partly engraved in the theory of change, the same approach. And that's where we now, as an organization, also stand, and it's completely what will become the next slide is completely like fresh input, which I also want to share with you, because so far we're still in the process of defining our impact. Mainly a brief intro to here, what means this framework and how you can actually reach, or how you can actually understand if you make an impact as an organization. You need to define your impact goals if you have some, and then you need to define step by step what could be your input, what means your activities, what means your output, what means your outcomes, and what means your impact within your impact goals. By input, in this case, it's basic understanding what is kind of financial or human capital you invest into shift yourself as an organization towards impacts. By activities is you need to define what could be your action points to reach it. By outputs, in this case, it's more like maybe number of services you provided or number of participants you reach through specific workshops or sessions. And outcomes and impact is already a little bit more advanced on that, which is sometimes we as organizations have difficulties to grasp. In this case, by outcomes, you already need to start on this as an organization, you need to understand what knowledge you change by your actions, and do you make any behavioral change which you set up in your impact goals. And in impact in this case, it's already you go beyond your activities of organization, but you actually strive for the social transformation, and maybe you can improve already with your activities or contribute to improvement of life. Maybe in our case, as Circle Berlin, we now kind of limit ourselves with the boundaries of Berlin primarily, but this is more or less the steps where you need to think as organization beyond that. And that's where we now as organization also standing. In the next slide. We defined for us 4 impact goals or direction for these impact goals. Maybe that should serve you as example how it works, because it helps also maybe to dive in further into the working session. So we try locally, we support the development of local circular economy skills, because diverse members who also join us, we try to provide them either with opportunities to be employed in the circular economy, or share our voluntary experience where they can learn new skills relevant for circular economy. We also build a network of circular economy organizations, primarily to raise awareness about the topic and provide knowledge to this organization. So we try to serve as a source for the knowledge in circular economy. We also try further to understand city material flows. And in this case, it's important because this is the only way how we can apply actually the resource loops and the so-called 10R strategies, which is repair, reuse, remanufacture, and so on and so forth. So we're still in the process of understanding in the more practical projects. And what is also for us very important is, actually, I was very happy what Andrea mentioned about open source knowledge sharing, because we understood as well it's a knowledge which you create here locally. We don't necessarily need to replicate as organization somewhere else, but we try to create the formats which are quite open and easy to replicate by other locations. That's why for me it was also very interesting first collaboration step with Circle in Munich, where we could share our experience and they could see if they can adopt it or not. So some kind of impact which we try to see outside of our organization. But this is something which is not maybe explicit, and that's where for us would be also the question. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. It's actually your question, which you can help us to shape it. Maybe there is something which we missed. At this point, I'm going to finish my presentation.
Great. So you have been learning a lot, and we gave you some deep dives into, or not deep dives, but we gave you an overview on these different aspects that come along to actually co-create the future of our cities. And now, Andrea, I will hand over to you because we are planning something with you, actually.